Hey, poker people, it's Sky Matsuhashi, and this is the Smart Poker Study Podcast. In episode 150, I answered 3 of your questions about studying poker as a team, the strength of small pocket pairs, and adjusting your pre-flop ranges. It's poker study time, y'all! Thanks for tuning in to this first episode in August. I am sorry that I failed to release a podcast last week, but skipping it freed up my time to finally finish the first draft of Volume 2 of How to Study Poker. I am super stoked about it. Now that I've finished this, I've got a lot of editing to do, formatting, picking a cover design, recording the audiobook, then finally releasing it. But I should have it all wrapped up by August 28th, and I'll keep you updated as the days tick by until then. Alrighty, it's time for some hand reading. In the prior hand reading episode number 149, I gave you my 4-step hand reading process. Today, in Class 2, I'll discuss the most important piece of software you need for great off-the-felt hand reading practice, and that is obviously Flopzilla! I was going to discuss Poker Tracker 4 as well, but that's just too much to cover in one episode. But I will say that Poker Tracker 4 is how I save all my online hand histories, and that's how I get the hands that went to Showdown that I do my hand reading practice with, obviously. And in Class 3 next time, I'll talk about having a growth mindset regarding your hand reading practice, and this is obviously a skill that can be developed over time with lots of work and the proper mindset. And in Class 4, I'll get into asking the right questions of yourself and your opponents to take your hand reading to the next level. So please visit the show notes page for everything I discussed today, along with a ton of screenshots and a pretty good Flopzilla hand reading video. Go to www.smartpokerstudy.com/pod151 for those show notes. Okay, it is time. Gambate!
And now for our feature presentation.
Alrighty, so for those who maybe are just tuning into the show for the first time or just haven't listened that much, the first question is, what is Flopzilla? You might have read the title of this episode and thought, Flopzilla? Just a quick background. Flopzilla is a range analysis software that's designed to quickly figure out how well a range of hands, or a specific hand, how well it hits the board. You can also do range versus hand analysis, range versus range, all that kind of stuff. And every time I discuss equities on the podcast, I'm getting my numbers from Flopzilla. So you'll hear me say things like, a 3-bet range of only pocket queens or better and ace king is a measly 2.5%. Or maybe I'll say something like, a 20% open raising range hits top pair or better 24% of the time. And besides Poker Tracker 4, utilizing Flopzilla has made the biggest impact in my game, so it's a program I truly recommend. And a Flopzilla license to register the program is only $35, and it really is worth every single penny. And you can't find a better use of $35 when it comes to improving your poker game. So just visit www.flopzilla.com to make your own purchase. And Flopzilla is a really visual thing. So in the show notes for today, I've posted a YouTube video where I show you step by step how I use Flopzilla to range an opponent through the streets. So visit the show notes, and in the show notes also, like I mentioned just a little while ago, there is a ton of screenshots kind of showing you what I'm talking about in this episode. So please check that out. Alrighty, so all of this Flopzilla talk begs the question, how does this software help improve my hand reading skills? Well, there are 4 ways that it helps me. Flopzilla helps with better range visualization, that's number 1. Number 2, better understanding of range and board interaction. Number 3, the ability to see how future cards affect equities. And number 4, improved combo counting skills. And I'll get into each of these right now. And as I discuss each, like I said, there's plenty of screenshots in the show notes to help you follow along. So please check that out. So number 1, better range visualization. And I am so much better at visualizing ranges now that I use Flopzilla every single day. The information in Flopzilla, it's presented in 2 main areas. On the far left is the range matrix, and in the center portion of the screen is the statistics section. And the statistics section is where most of the action happens when using Flopzilla. But getting back to the matrix side of it, when you look at just a matrices with all the different card combinations, by utilizing the matrix for range construction over and over again, I'm able to visualize what different sized ranges look like and what hands fall within those ranges. So for example, a 5% range looks like an arrow pointing up and to the left, and there's a screenshot of this, of course. So it's sevens or better and ace king and ace queen suited. Whereas a 30% range looks like a square covering the top left-hand corner with a line extending down to the bottom right-hand corner. And of course, screenshots for all these in the show notes, like I said. So that 30% range, because it's, centered up in the top left, it's all broadways, offsuit nines or better, suited eights or better, all pairs, and decent suited connectors and suited gappers as well. And I may not know exactly the hands, every single hand. I might not be able to name every single one that fits in these percentages, but as long as I can visualize the range, I can guess with relative accuracy which hands fall within and outside of each range. And Flopzilla allows you to save ranges that you've created. In the show notes, you can see a ton of different ranges I've saved. I have categories like 2-bet ranges, call 2-bet ranges, 3-bet ranges, call 3-bet ranges, and so on. And within each category, I have multiple ranges saved. So, for example, in the 2-bet ranges category, I have ranges saved for 5, 10, 15, 20, 25, 30, and 45%. Plus, when I load a range into the matrix, it's easy to tweak it hand by hand to assign my opponent the exact range I think that they're on. The more I use Flopzilla, the more in love with that program I become. I'm a better player today than I was a month ago because of Flopzilla, and in another month, I'll be even better than I am today. Alrighty, so that was the first great benefit of Flopzilla right there, better range visualization. Number 2 is better understanding of range and board interaction. And I love how Flopzilla lets me see exactly how a hand or a range of hands interacts with various boards. This is something that can be done by hand with paper and pencil, but what a waste of time when Flopzilla can do it in just milliseconds. If I asked you right now, how often does the 30% range I just discussed, how often does that range hit the board on an ace high and dry flop of ace 9 deuce rainbow? And by hit the board, I mean top pair or better, an open-ended straight draw, or some kind of a combo like a pair plus a draw. The answer is only 26%, and you can see this in a screenshot. Now that you know this, bluffing on that ace 9 deuce is a great idea when your opponent is foldy and he's raising with that 30% range pre-flop because he only hits something 26% of the time. When you run scenarios like this over and over again, it's beneficial to think about why the range hits so frequently or infrequently in this case. So the reason this range, this 30% range, hits so infrequently is because most of the hands in the range don't contain an ace. Sure, there's ace 5 suited or better and ace 8 offsuit or better, but there are a ton of underpairs, whiffed broadways, and suited connectors and suited gappers that just didn't flop much of anything. This kind of practice has really helped to develop a sense of how various ranges interact with different boards. And this understanding helps me to avoid costly bluffs and also helps to gain extra value with my nut hands when I know my opponent hits something worth paying for. And I mentioned the statistics section already. This is also where you narrow your opponent's range using the hand filters. And it's a great aspect within Flopzilla because once you remove hands from one street, you can't magically bring them back on future streets. So with that 30% range on the ace 9 deuce rainbow board, let's say we think our opponent is calling our donk bet with only mid pairs or better. So we remove all small pairs as well as non-pair hands and draws. Narrowing the range like this logically gives us less that we have to consider and makes it easier to devise positive EV plays against the smaller range. And after we filter out these hands, we can see now that instead of hitting the flop 26%, it's actually hit 48%, which means our opponent is continuing versus our bet 52% of the time. And you can see how valuable this understanding could be when deciding whether or not to bet on a given board and how much to bet. And there's a screenshot of this in the show notes. So if we bet full pot in this instance, this is still a profitable bet because a pot-sized bluff needs to work 50% of the time to break even. The opponent is folding 52% of the time, so we're profiting from this bet. But we may be able to size it a little lower, saving us money in case this is one of the 48% of the time that he decides to continue with mid-pair or better. If you are looking for a reputable online real money poker site, please join me on America's Card Room. It's US and rest of the world friendly, and it's been around since 2001. I play a lot of micro-stakes cash there as Frisky Misky, and I would love it if you join me. Just click through www.smartpokerstudy.com/ACR and use offer code SPSPOD so you can get a killer 27% rakeback deal. You'll also be supporting the show by going through me when you download the software, sign up, and use that offer code SPSPOD. And in case it's hard for you to come up with the cool screen names, here's a couple potential ones for you. Mugu Gaipan, Noodle Japan, and Makin' da Cream Man. And we've got a few shout-outs today. So speaking of Poker Tracker 4, like I said earlier, Eddie Sheriff and Thomas Schoberg both purchased Poker Tracker 4 through my affiliate link. And by doing so, they supported the podcast. I love you guys for it. I sent them some awesome Poker Tracker 4 kind of videos to help them get started with, utilizing Poker Tracker 4 to its fullest potential. If you want to follow in Eddie's and Thomas's footsteps, go to smartpokerstudy.com/pokertracker4 to sign up for your free trial or to make the purchase through that affiliate link. And we have a few people who purchased webinars this past week. Hinghwa Lam purchased the How to Study Poker webinar, and Liam McDonald and Greg Vogelsberger, they both purchased the Poker Tracker 4, or Getting the Most from Poker Tracker 4 webinar. Thank you all so very much, and for those purchases, I already sent you your bonus webinars. When you purchase a webinar, you always get a bonus one from me as well. So, and I think there's 9 webinars currently to choose from. So thank you guys very much for supporting the show. So if you want to support the show like these awesome poker people, visit the show notes for links to show that support. Alrighty, back to class, poker people. So I discussed how Flopzilla helps with number 1, better range visualization, and number 2, better understanding of range and board interaction. Now for number 3. The ability to see how future cards affect equities. So let's go back to that example of a 30% range on the Ace-9 Deuce Rainbow flop. Let's say we called their raise from the big blind and we had King of Clubs, Deuce of Clubs. Pre-flop, our King Deuce has 42% equity versus the 30% range. When that Ace-9 Deuce Rainbow with 1 club, when that flop comes out, our equity in the hand increases a tiny bit to 44%. And you can see this in a screenshot. If we think about how our equity went up just a little bit, it's because we hit bottom pair and a backdoor flush draw. Not a great hand, but still something possibly worth continuing to the turn with. It's also a great idea to plan the hand before you make your decision on the flop. So, we check the flop and our opponent bets. Remember, we have bottom pair with a backdoor flush draw. Before we decide to come along with a call or a raise maybe, what cards are we looking for on the turn? Flopzilla allows us to plug in any turn card we like, and it shows us how that card changes the equities involved. So let's say a Deuce of Spades comes off. Holy cow, this gives us trips, and now we are a 95% favorite in the hand. This card could have made our opponent a full house or better, but that's very unlikely to be the case. As you can see, 95% of the time, we're going to win right now. What if instead of the Deuce of Spades, it was a King of Spades? So we've got 2 pair, which skyrockets our equity to 83%. When the king hits, sure, it didn't take us up as high as 95% equity in the hand, but that's because the king hits our opponent's Broadway-heavy range. It also gives them, plenty of pairs and draws that can still beat us by the river. So instead of the deuce, instead of the king, what if a 4 of clubs comes? Well, this gives us a flush draw. It doesn't really hit our opponent's big card-heavy range either, so our equity here jumps up to 52% with this card. That's great. But what if the Jack of Hearts hits on the turn? This is a complete whiff for us. No pairs, no flush draw, nothing at all. It doesn't add any equity to us. But at the same time, it hits our opponent's Broadway-heavy range. So this card takes our equity down to 27%. So thinking about how future cards will affect equities before you click that button or throw out them chips is a great habit to develop. If you know which turn and river cards help your range and hurt your opponents, you'll be making more positive EV decisions as every hand plays out. Now, the final way in which Flopzilla has improved my hand reading skills is through improved understanding of hand combinations. So, Flopzilla can display ranges and statistics in percentage form, just like I've been discussing, but I really like how it can display the information in combo counting form as well. We can take that 30% range, and we see that it's made up of 398 combos of hands. Once we remove the King of Clubs and 4 of Clubs and the Ace 9 Deuce Rainbow board, it drops down to 314 combos in the range. By viewing this, we can see the effects of card removal on the range, on that 30% range. And I said originally that this range hits the flop 26% of the time. Well, that's actually only 84 combos. Sometimes these hard numbers, as opposed to percentages, are easier for some people to understand. And if you look at the screenshot in the show notes, this 84 combos is made of 9 different sets, 9 two-pair hands, and 66 top-pair hands. This information can be pretty useful, especially when we're thinking about bluffing someone who can fold top pair to the right amount of aggression, like triple barrels or large overbets. He only has 18 combos out of 84 that he definitely won't fold here. You can also see in the screenshot how the opponent has only 9 combos of Ace-King and 12 combos of Ace-Queen that may not fold to a ton of aggression, but maybe the remaining 45 Ace-X combos can fold. So the ability to count combos like this helps as you're playing and making decisions in both online and live realms. So when using Flopzilla, be sure to use both percentage form and combo form as you study hands.
Challenge!
I've got to say it, if you listen to this episode and don't put something from it to use in your next play or study session, you're completely wasting your time. So, having said that, here's my challenge to you for this episode. Work on your combo counting as you review hands with Flopzilla. When you get to a pivotal moment, like considering a bluff on the turn, count the total combos in your opponent's range and count the combos of hands they will likely fold. Using combos, do the math for yourself to figure out how often they're folding their hand based on the range you've put them on. Also, figure out the bet sizing you need to make it a break-even bluff. If they are folding 40 combos out of 100, then they're folding 40% of the time. What bet sizing would break even at 40%? Now, based on your opponent, do you think you need to increase the sizing to get the fold you want? Or could you make it even lower to save you money in case your bluff doesn't work? Now it's your turn to take action and do something positive for your poker game.
Now get it on.
This episode isn't complete until you head to the show notes page at www.smartpokerstudy.com/pod151 for all of those screenshots and that Flopzilla hand reading video I discussed today. Thank you so much for listening. If you can type the words Smart Poker Study, you can find me on Twitch, YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and now on Anchor. You can also hear the show on your Amazon Echo device or your Echo Dot device. Just tell it to play the Smart Poker Study podcast on TuneIn. And of course, you can send me an email, sky@smartpokerstudy.com. Alrighty, poker people. Next week in episode 152, I'll continue the hand-reading MET with class number 3, when I discuss having a growth mindset when it comes to improving your hand-reading skills. Word of mouth is the best advertising, so thank you very much for sharing this show with your poker pals. Your sharing and caring is what helps us grow. Until next time, study smart, play much, and make your next session the best one yet.
Tonight, yeah, I got to let it all go tonight. So turn it